A profound shift is underway within you, and those who once held sway through manipulation are acutely aware of it. They observe a new quality in your gaze, a noticeable difference that breeds genuine apprehension when your eyes meet theirs. Though they cannot articulate this change, they feel its presence. The compliant, controllable version of you is rapidly dissolving. Carl Jung meticulously documented the frightening essence of this metamorphosis. He termed it the moment when the healer becomes the judge, the point where the individual who habitually internalized the suffering of others finally ceases that labor. Empathy redirects itself, turning inward, and suddenly you perceive your reality with unflinching, brutal clarity. This emergent awareness is not fueled by vengeance. Rather, it functions as an unyielding mirror. The reflection it casts back is so stark, so undeniable, that it chills them to the bone. You functioned as the primary emotional shock absorber in their lives, the one who consistently apologized for your mere existence, habitually shrinking your presence so that others might feel artificially magnified. You internalize their rage, their inherent shame, and their chaotic dysfunction, holding this toxicity within your very being and mislabeling it as affection. You took responsibility for their malice, striving relentlessly to earn a kindness that was never freely given. Those who inflicted your wounds constructed their entire operational reality around your prior state. They required you to remain malleable, perpetually disoriented, and fundamentally questioning your own judgment. Your confusion served as their emotional anchor. Your silence granted them explicit permission, and your willingness to overlook their actions guaranteed their freedom to perpetuate the cycle. Crucially, they failed to grasp a core truth. Empaths do not merely process emotions, they meticulously record data. While you were occupied with self-apology, your subconscious mind systematically cataloged every interaction, every deceit, every internal inconsistency, every instance where their dialogue betrayed their underlying behavior. You were never just enduring their mistreatment. You were, perhaps unconsciously, conducting a detailed study of it. Jung illuminated this pattern through extensive clinical documentation, noting that highly empathic individuals demonstrate a capacity for pattern recognition far beyond the grasp of others. For instance, consider a typical case. An empath seeks therapy, ostensibly shattered by years of constant manipulation. Yet, during the therapeutic process, an astonishing capacity manifests. They articulate their abuser's psychological choreography with surgical precision. They possess intimate knowledge of which verbal cues guarantee specific reactions and comprehend the precise mechanisms of the idealization-devaluation cycle. They have, in essence, created a comprehensive map of the toxic relationship's entire emotional topography. They weren't just victims, they were unwitting analysts, compiling sophisticated psychological dossiers on every person who inflicted pain. This encyclopedic knowledge remained dormant, unused, until a crucial internal pivot occurred. That pivotal change arrived when your empathy finally retracted and focused on the self, what Jung defined as shadow integration. This is the moment you ceased sacrificing your innate knowing to maintain a false harmony. You abandoned the pretense of ignorance, refusing to unsee what was undeniably clear. You stopped fabricating justifications for conduct that was entirely indefensible and withdrew your protection from individuals facing the natural ramifications of their choices. This constitutes a total reversal of your long-standing empathic operation. For decades, your acute perception was directed outward, employed to better understand others so you could meet their demands more perfectly. You studied them, intending to enhance your capacity to love them. Now, that identical, powerful perception serves a solitary, crucial purpose, providing comprehensive self-protection. This is the source of their terror, and it's not your confrontation, but your sudden stillness. Your silence carries a new weight. Previously, your quietude signaled absorption of their venom. Now, it broadcasts finality. You have withdrawn the energetic contribution they need. You are no longer fueling their instability with your predictable reactions. You have cut off the essential emotional supply they require to function. The silent empath poses the greatest threat precisely because silence signifies the end of all discourse. You have stopped explaining, ceased defending, and abandoned the effort to secure their understanding. You have realized that those whose power relies on your confusion will never voluntarily embrace clarity. Your refusal to speak affirms that you see them in their totality, and that vision is what truly paralyzes them. Jung referred to this phenomenon in his work on projection as the mirror effect. By ceasing to internalize their toxicity, you transform into an unblemished reflective surface. Every negative projection they launch immediately ricochets back. When they observe you now, they are forced to confront their own unvarnished ugliness. The subtle manipulation disguised as affection, the callous cruelty framed as honesty, and the authentic self they have desperately labored to conceal. This outcome is not an act against them. It is simply the natural consequence of withdrawing the tremendous emotional labor you expended to make them comfortable with their abusive treatment of you. You ceased functioning as their informal therapist, and you no longer serve as the selective mirror that presented only their preferred self-image. They are now confronted by the authentic mirror, which meticulously reveals every flaw. This dynamic is vividly illustrated through narrative example. Consider an individual spending years in a relationship characterized by relentless gaslighting. Their recollection was consistently undermined, their reality openly disputed, and their fundamental perception invalidated. Then, a defense mechanism activated. One day they began documenting details, dates, dialogue transcripts, commitments offered and retracted, not to use as external proof, but solely to validate their internal sanity. Upon the relationship's conclusion, reviewing these meticulous notes revealed the pattern with devastating clarity. The cycle, for instance, repeated with formulaic consistency every 6 weeks. The post-violation, love bombing, adhered to an identical script, and the subsequent apologies employed the same precise vocabulary. What had been experienced as unpredictable emotional chaos was, in fact, a precise, repeating algorithm of control. This is the moment of profound awakening, the realization that supposed emotional turbulence was entirely calculated control. Such recognition induces a permanent, irreversible change. Manipulators possess an innate, predatory instinct for detecting this type of shift. They immediately sense the moment their established tactics lose potency. The emotional triggers they once relied on yield no predictable reaction. Guilt trips are suddenly impotent. Gaslighting attempts utterly fail to destabilize you. You are no longer subjugated by their displays of anger. Empaths are not merely broken. They are alchemists in the process of transformation. You see through their fabrications instantly. This sudden impermeability is precisely when genuine panic grips them. The predator recognizes that the dynamic has reversed, and the prey has fundamentally evolved. You can now anticipate their manipulation before it fully materializes. You recognize the emerging patterns long before they complete their trajectory, often knowing the script before they utter the first line. Years of enforced observation have physiologically rewired your brain, transforming you into a specialized psychological expert regarding their unique pathology. Crucially, you now leverage that profound understanding exclusively for self-preservation, rather than using it to rationalize their behavior. Jung's extensive work on psychological types highlighted a fascinating element of this self-actualization. Empathic individuals frequently exhibit what he defined as differentiated intuition, an ability to process not only surface-level social cues, but also submerged, unconscious patterns and hidden motives. For too long, this extraordinary gift was weaponized against them, their abusers exploiting their capacity to detect needs and preempt reactions. However, when the empath successfully integrates their shadow aspects, that exact intuitive power transforms into an impregnable shield of self-defense. The ultimate source of the manipulator's dread is this loss of control. Their entire self-concept was predicated on the belief that they could always successfully reel you back in, via a compelling conversation, a seemingly heartfelt apology, or a strategically deployed moment of pseudo-vulnerability. The realization that these once reliable instruments are now utterly ineffective generates genuine psychological terror. Jung keenly observed that abusive individuals demand their victims remain psychologically static, frozen in an earlier phase. They desperately require you to continue accepting the original narrative, the habitual lies, the worn-out excuses, and the repeated violations. Your evolution is their profound nightmare. Your attainment of clarity precipitates their crisis. The moment you achieve complete vision of them, their carefully constructed strategy instantly disintegrates. You are now predicting their every maneuver. When they initiate contact, you already anticipate the conclusion of the dialogue. When they proffer affection, you decode it as transactional currency for future leverage. When they reveal vulnerability, you recognize it as a calculated tactical maneuver designed to disarm your boundaries. You are now playing a sophisticated game of chess, while they remain tragically convinced they are playing checkers. Let's examine how this translates into practical, real-world dynamics, using a composite illustration derived from patterns Jung documented consistently. An empath establishes firm, long-overdue boundaries with a toxic family member. The family member's reaction rigidly adheres to a set sequence. First, confusion. They truly cannot fathom why the rules of engagement have shifted. Second, anger. A sense of outraged entitlement erupts. How dare you restrict their access to you? Third, bargaining. This phase involves sudden, earnest-sounding promises of transformation, offers to seek professional help, or declarations of profound new understanding. Fourth, smear campaigns. If they fail to control the individual, they will immediately attempt to control the surrounding narrative. Fifth, hoovering. Calculated attempts to suction the empath back in, using fabricated emergencies or highly nostalgic emotional appeals. The earlier version of you would have capitulated at stage 3, perceiving the promises of change as genuine hope. The awakened version instantly identifies this as merely stage 3 of a known, predictable algorithm. You neither engage nor justify. You simply hold the line, observing the pattern conclude itself without requiring your involvement. This is the confrontation that blindsides them completely. You are absolved from fighting or offering any proof. Your mere, integrated presence, now incorporating your shadow knowledge, forces a binary decision upon them. They must either retreat entirely or face psychological collapse. This is because standing near you means submitting to absolute transparency. Individuals whose existence is predicated upon elaborate deception cannot endure total visibility. You have attained a state of psychological invincibility. This does not mean you are immune to hurt, but rather that you are fundamentally unable to be deceived. That distinction is paramount. You have already demonstrated your capacity to withstand pain by surviving their worst offenses. However, deception necessitates your compliance, and your participation has been irrevocably withdrawn. Jung meticulously detailed the concept of the individuated personality, a person who has successfully harmonized both their luminous and darker shadow aspects. They are capable of radiating kindness without demonstrating weakness, expressing love without being credulous, and offering forgiveness without being naive. This is the state you are realizing. You are not becoming cold or cruel. You are becoming conscious. This seemingly intimidating version of yourself is, in fact, the most psychologically sound you have ever been. Your inherent kindness remains intact, but you have placed it securely behind a gate, requiring a specific key. Access is no longer universal, nor is it automatically deserved. This boundary is not cruelty, it is hard-won wisdom. What truly unnerves toxic individuals is their inability to pick that lock. They cannot manipulate or charm their way across your boundaries. They must now earn trust, and earning demands a level of internal accountability and change they are profoundly unwilling to make. Consequently, they label you cold, declaring that you are fundamentally changed. They announce to others that you are now difficult or harsh, and they are entirely correct. You are different. You changed. The compliant entity that tolerated their mistreatment is extinct. She perished the instant you integrated your shadow, the moment you finally ceased self-betrayal in the service of their comfort. Jung dedicated decades to chronicling this specific transformation in his clinical work, referring to those who completed it as the awakened ones. This designation was not for acquiring esoteric powers, but for finally realizing the enduring truth. The abuse was never your responsibility, and the manipulation was never truly obscured. You possessed the vision all along. You simply chose to invest belief in their potential, rather than accepting their consistent pattern. Now, you trust the pattern implicitly. You only grant credibility to the repeated evidence people provide. You refuse to wait for a hypothetical future version of them. Instead, you engage only with the person present before you right now. This radical adherence to reality is what makes you terrifying, for they can no longer successfully market their fantasies. You operate solely within the domain of observable fact.
The individuals who recoil from your emergence are precisely the ones who profited immensely from your prior, fragmented state. This is the undeniable truth. If your healing generates threat, they were never genuinely invested in your wholeness. They were merely adept at managing your damage. Their stake was perpetually tied up in your disorientation. Your clarity represents their ultimate failure, and they are fully cognizant of that fact. This explains the intensity of their attempts to re-engage you, the sudden, intense interest in your affairs, the unsolicited apologies, the grand promises of reform. Jung specifically cautioned against this phase in his analyses of manipulation, identifying it as the predator's last, desperate maneuver. They perceive you escaping their orbit and, in response, they escalate, not out of deeper affection, but out of mounting terror regarding lost control. Do not confuse intensity with genuine intimacy, nor their rising panic with sincere care. They are not terrified of losing you. They are afraid of losing access to you. The difference is existential. One pertains to genuine connection, the other to utility and supply. You were their essential supply, their emotional receptacle, their source of easy validation, the living proof of their power to dominate another person. Cutting off this resource initiates a severe withdrawal state in them. To those unfamiliar with the dynamics of addiction, this withdrawal often masquerades deceptively as love. They are not yearning for you. They are craving the function you serve for them. This distinction is vital. One scenario merits compassion, the other demands an unyielding boundary. If your transformation causes others discomfort, allow them that fear. Their emotional reaction is decisively not your responsibility to manage. You are under no obligation to diminish your own stature so that others can maintain their inflated self-image. You are not required to shroud your light merely to soften the stark contrast of their darkness. Furthermore, you owe no one access to the version of yourself that once silently accommodated their abuses. Clinical evidence provides powerful illustration of this transformation dynamic. Individuals who successfully navigate this integration report strikingly similar experiences. Those who caused harm became immediately, visibly agitated the moment boundaries were erected. Friends who specialized in crisis calls vanished when the well of unpaid emotional therapy dried up. Family members who incessantly demanded labor suddenly lacked availability when equitable reciprocity was suggested. Partners who thrived on the power imbalance became overtly hostile when parity was introduced. All of this chaos erupted because the empath finally chose self-preservation, because the mirror at last began reflecting absolute truth, rather than carefully curated fantasy. The most beautiful revelation Jung discovered while tracking these transformations was the outcome. After the inevitable conflict, once the dust settled and the toxic elements had effectively filtered themselves out of the empath's life, a profound quietude emerged. They achieved peace. Not a tentative, conditional peace reliant on perfect external circumstances, but a deep, unshakable tranquility born of internal alignment. They permanently ceased self-abandonment, and that single act altered everything. This transformation signifies you are becoming the person who will never allow you to be broken again. You are learning to embody for yourself everything you once desperately sought from others. You are forging yourself into your own fiercest protector, your primary validator, and the sovereign source of your self-worth. This radical self-sufficiency is inherently terrifying to those who maintained power over you by exploiting your need for external validation. They will accuse you of being excessive, too sensitive, too intense, too demanding. Let their criticisms pass. For the voices declaring you too much are the same voices that flourished when you genuinely believed you were not enough. They require you to contract your being,
your expansion fundamentally undermines their constructed reality. Jung asserted that the greatest privilege of a lifetime is the realization of one's true self, but he added a crucial caveat: this process of becoming inspires dread in everyone invested in your former identity. Your mere transformation acts as a reflective judgment upon their stasis. Your visible progress underscores their conscious refusal to evolve. Your self-respecting boundaries expose the extent of their profound entitlement. They do not despise the person you are becoming. They despise what that person reveals about the stagnant individual they consciously chose to remain. Therefore, if they are gripped by fear, let them fear. If they feel uncomfortable, allow them to sit fully within that discomfort. You are not responsible for regulating other people's emotional responses to your self-respect. You are absolutely not required to tailor your hard-won healing to suit the convenience of the people who inflicted the original damage.
The empowered empath you are evolving into will inspire terror in those who once shattered you. And that is exactly how it must be, for the person they now fear is the one they are powerless to break. She possesses too much knowledge. She sees with undeniable clarity. She honors her own worth too profoundly to mistake negligible affection for true love. This development does not signify the cessation of your kindness. It is, instead, kindness fortified with an iron backbone. This is empathy guided by unwavering boundaries. This is love that finally includes your own well-being within its sacred equation. The people who fear this new incarnation were never destined to remain in your life. Their purpose was merely to deliver the curriculum of non-negotiable boundaries. And that lesson has reached its conclusion. Jung postulated that every individual who causes you significant pain ultimately reveals something essential about your own resilience. The suffering they inflicted served to showcase the immense power you possess, proven by the very fact that you survived them. You endured the worst they were capable of. And now, you know irrevocably, there is nothing left they can do that you cannot handle. There is no deceit or subtle manipulation you cannot instantly recognize and see through. You are immune to the emotional blackmail or guilt trips designed to pull you back into compliance. You are truly awake now, and let me tell you, an awakened individual is absolutely terrifying to those who desperately rely on your confusion, your compliance, and your silence. If you feel this profound internal shift underway, if you recognize the unmistakable signs of this powerful transformation taking root, I invite you to join this community. Comment below and type the words, "I am awake." Do this not as a boast of superiority, but as a solemn declaration, a sacred commitment to the powerful, self-possessed person you are actively becoming. This is the version of you who will finally stop sacrificing her own wholeness and well-being in a doomed attempt to fix those who are stubbornly resistant to their own healing. Subscribe if you seek more uncut truth regarding the psychology of transformation. We offer deeper insights into the pervasive patterns that hold us captive and the radical clarity required to set us completely free. This channel exists exclusively for those brave enough to look unflinchingly at the uncomfortable realities operating beneath the surface of their lives, the ones willing to integrate their own shadow material rather than defensively projecting their dysfunction onto the world around them. Thank you sincerely for being here. Thank you for making the difficult, courageous choice of consciousness over temporary comfort. And finally, thank you for evolving into the person the old version of you would be genuinely honored and immensely proud to finally meet.